Hello, hello, and welcome to everyone to our Artificial Intelligence and Prompt Engineering webinar. We are going to get started in just a moment, and so we'll give time for the room to fill. So Abdul Hamid, Dennis, Jacinta, I'm glad you're here. Nuruddin, Obioma, Seraphine, Tijani, Umar, it's great to see everyone joining. This has been a near record registration for this webinar, so we're really excited that you're here to join us with Nicolle Merrill, who's one of our an AI expert. And if you want to let us know in the chat where you're joining from, that's always fun to see. We have people typically joining from all over the world, and I'll just share a few housekeeping items while we're waiting for everyone to join. If you have questions related to the webinar or anything else during the session, please use the Q&A and not the chat so we can keep them in one place. We will have time dedicated to the Q&A at the end. So I just like to keep the chat, as you can see, gets pretty busy. So please do keep that in the Q&A if you have specific questions. But it looks like we have folks joining from North Carolina in the United States, Nigeria, Ghana. I'm joining from Malawi. We have someone from Ontario, Canada. I was just in Toronto last week. We have South Africa. So it's super exciting. People from all excited to learn more about prompt, starting it or deepen your experience or in the space. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you to everyone who's sharing where you're joining from. My name is Jennifer Bongura, and I'm Nexford University's Director of Career Innovation. And I'm really excited about this webinar because I've been using ChatGPT more and more in my work every day. And I know there's so much more that all of us can be doing. So we are really thrilled to have the privilege of hearing from Nicolle Merrill today, who's a seasoned senior conversational AI designer and AI literacy expert. She specializes in designing and building large-scale conversational AI experiences for fintech and payments products. And her expertise includes natural language understanding and natural language processing interaction design, UI UX, data analysis, and content strategy to deliver AI-powered customer experience solutions. But not just that, her passion for education and sharing knowledge has also led her to become an esteemed author and speaker with her book, Punch Doubt in the Face: How to Upskill, Change Careers, and Beat the Robots. That empowers career changers to navigate the future of work in the age of AI. So she's worked as a global career coach and learning experience designer at Yale, a content strategist for a really cool looking travel company, and most recently as a conversational AI designer and trainer. If you want to learn more, I'll put this in the chat in a moment when I turn it over to Nicolle, but you can check out her website, soboringai.com, and I'll also share her LinkedIn, because I learn something every time she posts something. I'm learning something more about AI and career related things. So she's currently working on generative AI and LLM product design with a focus on customer impact, and has expertise in prompt engineering, prompt chaining, prompt injection testing, and LLM quality testing. She's also an AI ambassador and teaches AI basics to non-technical teams. So thank you so much, Nicolle, for making the time. And thank you to everyone who is joining us live or on the recording for this webinar around the world. Nicolle, I'd love to turn it over to you. And could you just share a little bit more about your background and experience in this field? And we're both in the career space, and we know it's a winding road, but you've really had an interesting path. So I'd love to hear if you could give us, high level or detailed level overview of your career.
Sure. And thank you so much for the introduction and the opportunity to be here and talk to everyone. As you mentioned before, having a background as a career coach, when I worked at Yale, my experience was actually working with international students from all over the world. And it was so much fun. And my day was very much different perspectives and really cool conversations. And so it's wonderful to be in kind of that global environment again. Yes, my background is pretty non-traditional. This is my fourth career change, landing in AI and in working in artificial intelligence. I am not an engineer. I should say that off the bat. I am a liberal arts graduate. I studied languages. I love writing. I love culture. I love people, and I ended up in this field very much by mistake. I was a career coach, and I had worked at Yale. Took some time off from that. Was writing a book about the future of work, and started looking at AI. And I was like, what does it mean? What does AI mean from the perspective of someone who's not a data scientist and an engineer? And in that research, I kind of went down a really deep rabbit hole trying to understand what does it mean for non-technical people like myself, and in the process discovered that there's a field of artificial intelligence called conversational AI that really combines language with artificial intelligence. And giving my love of language and words, I wanted to learn more about it. And conversational AI actually powers devices like Siri, Alexa, and now we have ChatGPT and so on. So I transferred into it just by doing a lot of research, understanding the technology, but also finding my niche. So I had a background in career coaching, and I ended up finding a chatbot that interviews candidates. And I thought, well, that's odd. I've never seen such a thing. And they had a role open. It was a startup, so they had a role open for a conversation designer. And startups tend to have a lot more flexibility with your background and taking in non-traditional candidates. And I got that job, and that was about 5 years ago. And since then, I've really just been in the conversational AI world. And then 6 months ago, as you know, ChatGPT, well, more than 6 months at this point, 9 months ago, ChatGPT launched to the world, and it really introduced people at scale to the idea of conversational interfaces, that idea that you can talk to machines, right? And have them give you something back. And so since then, I've been working with my company, Boring AI, to help individuals, whether they're executives or managers, understand the basics of generative AI and the impact inside your organization and on your career. So that's how I got here.
It's amazing. I love it too when people share your career. It sounds like, oh yeah, it's just like tick, tick, tock. You made these things happen. And yeah, it's like there's so much within, which I'm sure your book outlines more, and you've alluded to here. But thank you for sharing the journey that you've been on, because I'm sure there's a lot of people in the room who are thinking, oh, I am or I'm not a technical person. How could I transition into a career in AI?
Sure.
Well, could you tell us a little bit more? You said you worked at a startup doing interview that was using a chatbot for interview prep. What does it look like as a conversational AI designer? And maybe even specifically within this interview chatbot, if you could share, like, what does it actually look like your day-to-day work?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I didn't know what to expect, right? It was very much, I would show up and I would read transcripts of these conversations. And these were conversations between a bot and people that were looking for a job, right? And so I'd read them and I'd flag inconsistencies. I'd flag times where, the bot got it wrong, right? So maybe they said the wrong thing, or maybe it missed a cue in the conversation from the user. And I would flag them and then give it it's called conversational analysis. If you're from like a literature background or content background, it's also known as content analysis, right? Where you're looking at what are the major themes, what could we improve? In this case, what could we improve? And then I would have conversations with the engineers about the performance, about the experience from the customer point of view, and that would inform changes that they made. And in the beginning, I didn't understand the technology. I knew vaguely how it worked, but in those conversations with engineers, I started to learn, okay, well, why is the bot giving a wrong answer, and what can we do to improve it? What are they going to do technically to improve it? Now, I didn't know how to code at the time, and so I would learn from those conversations. And eventually what started happening was that I was in a position to actually inform how to design the conversations, because in conversational AI, the way you ask the question matters. An open-ended question versus a closed question matters, because you have to, in traditional conversational AI, if we forget about ChatGPT for just a minute, you have to anticipate what a customer is going to say. And in conversation, that can be so many different things. So you shape the conversation with these questions. And so over time, I started working with clients to understand their needs, and then building out these conversations that met those clientele needs. So based on the job that people were applying to, based on the goals that the customer had, did the customer want to just screen candidates, or did they want to schedule candidates, and so on. And so really work with the understanding of the technology, its limitations and opportunities, and my understanding of language. And I was like this beautiful fit. I would say that, in the beginning, it wasn't a glamorous job at all, because all I'm doing is reading hundreds of pages of transcripts, which is kind of boring for a lot of people. But for me, it was that entryway to kind of get in there and really understand. By the end of that job, I knew far more about their product than even the CEO, because I spent every day learning about how this model performs, the different types of experiences, and most importantly, customer behavior.
Is that where the name for your company came from? So boring AI?
In part, yeah. I work so I'm located in Oregon, and Oregon it's not, Silicon Valley doesn't have a lot of people working in AI. And I would tell, friends, colleagues, like what I did, and they'd be like, well, sounds really boring, but it's not, And so when I finally told people I'd been doing training and teaching non-programmers and non-technical folks about the basics of AI, and they'd say, well, yeah, but that just sounds so boring. And I'm like, but it's not. In fact, I teach it in a way that's not boring. Like it'll make it interesting, right? So I just figured I'd just call it boring AI, just get everyone's attention that way. So it seems to work.
That's awesome. I love it. So, within, artificial intelligence, we have prompt engineering, and I'd love for in this webinar, we could do, talking about using artificial intelligence tools for your career, or, maybe people who are on the call or webinar are building a product. So I'd love if you could talk a little bit more, take us to the basics around like, what is prompt engineering, and where would somebody start if, we're on this webinar and have never used a tool before, and I'm sure some people have. Could you share a little bit more about just like, the intro?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll set some context. Prompt engineering is part of generative AI, which is part of a field called natural language processing. There's multiple fields in AI, things like computer vision, robotics. But in this case, we're talking about using natural language to instruct a model to generate and to make an output. So we see it in text, images, videos. It's really taken off in the last year. This technology has been around for several years, but it's the fact that some of these companies like OpenAI, who makes ChatGPT, made these tools accessible to the consumer in a way that they hadn't been before. They were tools that only data scientists used. And so we saw products like Midjourney, the program that will output images based on a prompt, or like I said, ChatGPT on the text side. And so what happened was, because of the popularity of that technology and these tools, we started to learn about this field called prompt engineering. It's also called prompt design, prompt crafting. Prompt engineering is a pretty interesting term because it's actually a lot of art. It's the art of language, quite honestly. And there's different tricks and ways to go about doing it. But in the end, you're using language to instruct a piece of software or a model that's behind the scenes, a machine learning model, to perform a set of tasks and give you an output. So as far as, so that's the context of what it is. And when we talk about prompt engineering in the context of career development, we're talking about really three things. One is, how do we use these tools? Right? How do we use them for our career? How do we use them for our job search? And then we have, how do customers use these tools? So if you're looking to get into a job and say maybe the tech space, in particular the tech space, thinking about how customers use these tools is imperative, because a lot of organizations right now are scrambling to understand how these tools work and how their customers might use them, and they're building the products with them. And then you have the third, which is, how do companies build these tools? And we won't get into that today because this is such a large subject, but that's also part of your career development, especially if you're in the MBA path. How are companies actually building these tools from start to finish? And prompt engineering comes into play there. So to scope it down for today's talk, we'll focus on that, how do we actually use these tools? And I'll say, you can read a lot of articles about prompt hacking, prompt engineering. You see them going around on LinkedIn, the 100 best prompts that you could use for GPT, and it's almost overwhelming. right? Because you're like, oh, should I be using all of these? Do I have to do this? And my answer is no, you don't have to do all of those, but you should be getting hands-on, right? It's not enough to just read or watch a video. You need to actually go play with these tools. And ChatGPT right now is the most accessible of those tools, right? It's by OpenAI. They make it really easy for you to just interact with a chatbot that is incredibly powerful and that you can get to do many things, right? You can get it to write a resume, a cover letter, help you prep for interviews, and so on. And so to start, I would start with one, logging into ChatGPT and starting to play. I think this space is really interesting because there is an element of play, right? You don't have to be so formal. You can get it to talk like a pirate and see what happens, right? The more you experiment with prompting and seeing the outputs and then iterating, which is, constantly changing your inputs, making them better, seeing how the model performs, the more you'll understand how these tools work.
It's interesting. This is a space where I'm certainly, I'm constantly curious, and I saw that that's something that you have in your bio on LinkedIn. And I do feel intimidated about generative AI, ChatGPT, prompt engineering. If you're on the outside, and I was talking with a colleague before, it feels like, well, how can I actually use it? And yeah, I'm not technical, but I think you've broken it down now and given some real examples for how people can practically use it. And I feel like there are some parallels even with language learning, like spoken language, where it's people get so intimidated by getting embarrassed about making mistakes, about making errors, that they just avoid speaking with people because they don't want to come across looking stupid. So I feel like on ChatGPT, that's maybe a blocker for a lot of people where they're like, oh, but it's great because, like you're saying, the more that you play with it, the more it becomes familiar.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, about the piece about kind of being on the outside and the intimidation sometimes, or the fear of looking like you don't know what you're talking about. Because I hear this, honestly, I hear this from executives in our one-on-one coaching. I hear it in training. There's a piece on my website where I say there are no dumb questions, like submit your questions anonymously, right? Because can be such AI, right? It's such an intimidating idea. We have narratives from our different cultures that have been told about AI. And quite honestly, the industry themselves keeps it very shrouded in mystery. We hear like, oh, it's magic, right? Or it's going to be this superhuman power. And it's like, no, it's a tool, right? And that start by thinking of it as simply a tool. This is a tool that is powerful, right? And it's built by really smart people, but it's simply a tool that can do multiple things. And your job as someone who is trying to learn about this technology is to figure out, well, what can it do? And what I really like about it is framing it from that curiosity angle, where it's like, well, I'm just here to learn. I don't know everything. So you start with the understanding, I don't know, right? So let me figure it out. And who do I need to talk to help me figure that out? Right. And we think about, if you are already inside of an organization, is there someone you trust on the technology side that you can, reach out to and say, hey, look, I noticed that you're building these products, or I noticed that you've posted about using ChatGPT on LinkedIn or something like that. Or maybe you've had a conversation. Could you tell me more? Could I just ask you a bunch of questions? Right. And I think it's that ability to really approach it from a curious perspective and not having to go in knowing everything that helps you succeed in these spaces. I still, I've been in the space 5 years and I'm still asking. I tell engineers all the time, my job is to ask questions. I ask questions all day. Why do we do this? What is this? How do we do this? And sometimes I get answers that I have no idea what they mean. Right. So embrace that questioning.
I love that. And I like, even at Nexford, we have an MBA with a specialization in artificial intelligence. And I love when I see companies who are trying to mirror and model what we are putting out as a product. So even internally, we have our own AI at Nexford channel for employees. So we can share with each other, like, how are you actually practically using different tools? So, and I think there's an interesting opportunity for job seekers and also people who are employed to become that go-to person for something when you're using no code tools. If you're not technical, we have a person internally, his job is, he manages the CRM, or the customer relationship management tool. And he's now become like our in-house go-to expert on AI tools because it's a personal interest and passion. And I feel like I see, of course, we're a smaller company. So I mean, people who are working at really, really big companies, maybe that's harder. But I don't know. Have you seen a lot of that, or what would you recommend in that space?
I mean, that's music to my ears, what you're telling me right there. I absolutely love that. And it's such a good example of just kind of a low, it's not, this isn't something you have to like take on as like your extra project. You could, right? But this idea of sharing information and discussion, that's the piece. And, platforms like Slack, or, your WhatsApp channels, like you can use those easily to really create that community of curious people and start saying, like, I saw this, what is this, what do you think, have you used it, how would you use it? If you're a student, you're already in that learning mindset, and you're probably exploring like an industry or a subject that really interests you, so you can start sharing what you find in the context of that subject with peers who are like-minded, or peers from another industry, right? So they can give their perspective. And so it really opens up just like a rich discussion about these tools. One thing I'll note, when I got into conversational AI, one of the ways I got that job was because I was actually writing about the products. I had a blog at the time where I was kind of writing about my research for the book, what I was finding. And then as I started looking at conversational AI and these chatbots, I started writing about them. I started writing about what worked with them and what didn't, because I was finding some chatbots that I thought just were a bad user experience. And as an expert in careers and job prep, I was like, this doesn't work for candidates. And so I would write about it. And that showed employers, hey, look, like, I know this space. And when I applied for the job, I sent a link to my blog post all about their competitors, because I had written it about their competitors. And that was one of the differentiating factors and why I got hired. So although I didn't have the experience, I've been reading about it and writing about it. Now that's next level, right? That's the next level from just sharing and talking about it. But you can see the evolution of how you start to gain that knowledge in the space without having a technical background or without knowing how to code.
That's great. I'd love to like get practical, because we've mentioned tools, and we've mentioned ChatGPT now. You talked about Midjourney. What other tools are you seeing that you're super excited about, that you think are accessible and actually, like, well, I mean, it doesn't have to be super useful, it could be for fun too, but that you're seeing?
Yeah, I think it's interesting with tools, a lot of them are kind of behind the scenes, right? So we see things like, Google and Microsoft embedding this technology into their products. So instead of going to a chat GPT, you would just generate your information in like Google Docs, right? It's like, help me write this thing. I just looked at, Google just released Google Labs, where you can go in and play with their new generative products. Like I think one is generate like a project agenda in their spreadsheets, generate generate images within slides, and so on. And so you have these opportunities with these products to kind of get hands on it, to see how do they perform. I think as an excitement, I'm moderately excited, right? But it is interesting to see how these large companies have taken this technology and started to integrate it into their products. And you start to see what works and what doesn't, right? Because not everyone is going to be a prompt engineer. We're getting familiar with it, but the quality of your prompts affects the quality of your outputs. And so it'll be interesting to see how users actually adapt to having these tools inside products they know, like Outlook, like Google Docs. I think there's, beyond that, we see a lot of, different types of use cases. So for example, Khan Academy just released an educational assistant. It's a chatbot that has, that helps students with their like math skills and problem sets. And what's interesting about that is their entire philosophy is like, we're not going to give you the entire, we're not going to give you the answer. We're going to help you get towards that answer, but we're not going to solve it for you. And then we also have, they've introduced things like characters, so you can chat with characters from historical times. That can go either way. I don't know that I'm excited, but it is an interesting use case. I tend to fall on the side of what is the impact of some of these. And, we're not going into a lot of it today, but these models do carry some things like bias and harm. And a lot of these companies building them are trying to, put safeguards around them, but we're still looking at like, what is the impact of a model? When I say model, I mean, software that can, basically impersonate historical figures. From what perspective is this being created, right? And so what you're going to see is a lot of products that are coming out that are kind of testing those boundaries. And so from the initial question you talked about exciting, well, it's exciting, but I'm always excited yet cautious, excited yet curious, right? Because this technology isn't neutral. So it's really trying to explore the technology and think about it from your lens, and then ask, what is the impact of these tools, of these products that we're essentially experimenting with, right? And so those are a couple examples. I would say, Spotify's got an AI DJ now, generative AI DJ, that's going to create music. They already have powerful recommendation systems. It's a field of AI that predicts what you're most likely to listen to. That's how we get the playlists and stuff like that. But this is a different type. This is more curated based on your tastes and so on, so you can interact with it. And so I thought that was kind of an interesting use case. And then, what I think starts to get interesting is the use in different fields, right? So we all have our fields that we're experts in, and we're going to go into. And like the other day, I was looking at a company called Reg AI, and their whole entire thing is, sales AI, making it easier for you to do outreach, right? Making it easier for you to write emails and so on, and close deals. And they're thinking of it from an end-to-end experience. So those are a mix of kind of enterprise and customer facing tools. But what I would recommend is a very simple Google search, which is your industry generative AI use cases. And you'll find like so many articles about it. And from there, you can start looking at like, what is this? And I will caution, so much hype right now, right? They're all promising they can do incredible things, right? But it's, if you can get access, or if you can watch YouTube videos or demos about it, or even demo the products yourself, it's worth trying just to kind of see where they're actually at.
Well, that's great to hear. I think sometimes, again, it can, and why I like having webinars and opportunities like this to connect with experts in the field, is that it can feel unapproachable. And at its core, over time, like start simple, start with ChatGPT
Exactly.
in there, and see now with the AI PR to develop the prompts. Is that what it's called? Of like the prompt catalog. Yeah, and I think, for folks who have never used ChatGPT or still beginning, how do you think people can get better at being with their own art of engineering or prompt design? I mean, this is like asking somebody, how can you be a better conversationalist in life? Maybe
Yeah.
it's too broad, but what would you recommend?
Apply it to the thing that you're doing right now. So start with your job search. Because look, you can use AI to ChatGPT to improve your resume, to write a cover letter, to get interviewing techniques. So here's something I did last night, because I was curious, about how can I make this work for like a 2-year MBA, right? I used to be an MBA career coach. I've seen the cycle of career coaching and the development of MBA students. I was like, okay, what am I going to get from ChatGPT? I've never tried this. So I was like, the prompt I started with was, how do I become a product manager as an MBA? That was it, right? Because back when I worked as an MBA career coach, people wanted to be product managers. And I got kind of this very generic output. It was things that you would expect, that you already kind of know. It was about, get familiar with the tech industry, acquire relevant skills, leverage your transferable skills, network, get an internship. Well, that's fine. But that's not exactly what I was looking for. That was a little generic. I could read an article and get that. So I changed my prompt. And the thing to know about prompts is the more context and info that you give let's say ChatGPT, the better an output you're going to get. So instead of saying, how do I do something? How do I get a job as a product manager, as an MBA? I wrote, and I'm actually going to read it here. You're an MBA career coach. I'm in my first year and I'm trying to get a job as a product manager at a tech company. I have no background in tech. Give me a breakdown of the steps I should take in the next 2 years to change careers and get a job at a top tech company as a product manager. Now, in that prompt, what I've essentially done is I've given ChatGPT a role. You're an MBA career coach now, so it knows the perspective. Then I told it about myself in depth. I'm in my first year. I want to get a job as a product manager and I have no background. So now it knows, right, that I'm coming in as a career changer, and it knows my goal. Now we could improve on this, but I'll just tell you what I got in that case. I got a far more detailed plan. And I got, take online courses, learn, a bit of Python, SQL, familiar yourself with tech concepts like Agile, cloud computing, and data analytics, right? That is far more concrete. And then it goes on to talk about, documenting your projects, documenting, how you would do product management and your approach, do some user research to show your skills on understanding users, and show that you've done it before you go to apply for the job. Then it breaks down the second year of the type of courses you should take, creating a personal website to show your expertise in the area, and so on. And so it really delivers this kind of richer plan than what you would have got with just a general question. And I think that demonstrates kind of where you can start, right? Having a career coach is amazing. And by the way, when you have access to them in school, use them, right? Because in the end, humans are better than, bots. But you can use bots to help with the beginning, or maybe give you a perspective you haven't thought of, or maybe give you structure to a problem that you haven't really worked out, right? And so the goal with prompt engineering is to really iterate. You start with your basics and you say, that's not the answer I want. How could I get better? And it's about giving that context to the machine and saying, this is who I am. This is who you are. This is my expected output. You could give examples, right? And so on.
That's great. I love this idea. I think it's so interesting. I think this is a missing piece when using something like ChatGPT, is helping create that persona of who the person is that you are talking to, so that they can feed back information from that perspective. So thank you for highlighting that for folks. And I'm wondering now, what was it? I think I was thinking about different ways that I've used it as well, of like, I've asked it to do plan travel for me, or things that you would maybe, if in your dream world had a virtual assistant, or need help. And I like what I was thinking about was giving the other side in a not negative sense, but like, oh, I want to propose this idea. I have used it this way. I want to propose this new idea to my boss. Can you help me anticipate what are some of the resistance that I'm going to receive to the idea, so that you can develop sort of the counter arguments? Have you used it in that way, or do you have any recommendations or thoughts about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've certainly done it with presentations, right? I do a ton of demos with leadership and stuff like that. And so I've given it context and said, look, here's an area that I'm trying to persuade, folks to get buy-in. What should I focus on? Because I'll be honest, there are days where I've got too much going on. And so sometimes I'm just not thinking ahead. And so it's like, it can almost jog a memory, right? It's not, I know how to persuade leadership, but some days, it's just not coming to me. And so it's almost like using it as just kind of like a quick pick me up, right? Like, just put me in the mindset. I've used it for outlines on really complicated topics, right? Where it's like, what would be a good way to approach this, right? Or if I've got too much information, how do I narrow this down, right? And those are some of the ways that I think are really useful, is kind of that assistant perspective, to really have something really narrow down your options. Right, because sometimes we have so many options when we're creating or producing or delivering on something. And so I really like to use it for that as well, if I don't have someone to chat with right there.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I don't know, Emmanuel, you have joined the chat. Are you available to join us on camera? If maybe you need a moment, if so. But otherwise, I'd be happy to introduce you if you are There you are. Oh my gosh, we're so happy. So Nicolle, thank you so much. We're going to continue. This will be a conversation. I want to introduce briefly Emmanuel Michael, who is named, as one of the 100 most influential global HR leaders. And he is a leadership coach, a career coach, and a public speaker. And he is also the head of people and culture for Let's She Go Nigeria. And if I may, yeah, so we're really thrilled to have you here. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for making the time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I've been enjoying the conversation from Nicolle on how to use the AI tools. So for me, basically, let me just share how I have used it and how it has helped. So some of the things that she described are some of the benefits that I also have gotten from that particular tool. So for people who want to either develop their career or they are freshers from school, if you really don't know how to start, say for instance, you want to engage a coach, yes, you're going to spend so much money to engage a coach and you don't have that. You can actually start with the AI tool. So one that I'm more familiar with is the ChatGPT. So you could actually start by asking ChatGPT to even give you an idea of what sort of a career goal should you set for yourself, or what career is suitable for someone with your kind of educational background, qualifications, describe your person, what you like, based on your preferences. You share that information with ChatGPT. ChatGPT would suggest a long list of careers that are suitable for your kind of person with your personality profile. So say, for instance, you've done a personality profile assessment, you can feed that in, add your qualifications. Then it will tell you these are the careers that will be suitable for someone who has this kind of personality with this qualification. And then you can then go further to then begin to choose from that list and ask more deeper questions. Okay, you've chosen a particular job title. What are the things you need to do based on the information you've provided? So if you don't have all the skills that are required, ChatGPT will provide you a long list of skills. And then how do you then develop yourself to acquire those skills? It will also give you, and just like Nicolle said, you can actually get a career plan, a 5-year career plan. This is where I want to be in 5 years' time. And you will get a program that will tell you what you need to do in year 1, year 2, year 3, and then you begin to, use that to assess yourself. So those are some of the things that you can actually get from ChatGPT. And for me, sometimes when I want to make presentations and I have a topic in mind, so one of the things that I usually do, I use ChatGPT as my executive assistant. So I can get a framework, an outline of what should be in that report or presentation, and then begin to develop. I can also ask ChatGPT to provide me some clue to what should be in each of those slide deck. And then I can then back it up with my real life experience and double check some of the information that is coming. So you also need to be very cautious, because sometimes information provided, as we know, it's more like historical data that you get from ChatGPT, not forward looking. So you need to also be willing to do some additional research to provide those forward-looking information that you need for your presentation. When it comes to data, for me, I don't rely 100% on data provided from ChatGPT. So I need to validate those sources and make sure that I have the appropriate data. So those are some of the things that you can do. Say, for instance, you don't even know how to prepare a CV. It can help you do your CV. It can help you do your cover letter. If you have challenges with, okay, what sort of interview questions should I expect, based on this role that I'm interviewing for? You can take the advert, okay, for a particular job role, feed it to ChatGPT, take your CV, feed it to ChatGPT, and then ask ChatGPT to become like the interviewer and then ask you questions. So as it's asking you questions, you're providing answers. So ChatGPT will help you to analyze whether the answers that you're providing to those questions, whether they will meet the standard that the recruiter is expecting or not, So that helps you to refine what you should say. And then in situations where your answer does not really meet, ChatGPT will give you a framework, a guide to say, this is the way you need to present your response. Okay. So that's basically for me, that has been my experience using the tool.
That's great. Thank you so much, Emmanuel. And I want to just highlight for everyone who's attending, Nicolle and Emmanuel consistently are posting content on LinkedIn that challenges what I think, and like new ways to think about topics that I'm interested in related to career development and artificial intelligence. So I put their LinkedIn handles in the chat. Emmanuel, we're gonna get you over 500,000 followers, I think, after this webinar. You are so popular on social media, so it's super exciting having you here. And of course, Nicolle, who, like I said in the beginning, has written a book about navigating these career transitions and future-proofing your career. I'm curious too, especially Emmanuel and Nicolle, would love to hear what you think. Coming from the HR background, leadership development, have you seen or are you encouraging employees to use AI? I'm imagining in a performance review, maybe I receive feedback from my supervisor or from colleagues and want to turn that into show them now how I'm taking that feedback and putting it into practice, and maybe asking ChatGPT to give me ideas for how to make action on different feedback. Have you seen that, or are you encouraging people to do that, Emmanuel?
Yes, I will encourage. Usually when you get feedback from your line manager, so I usually will encourage employees, people who work, to have either a mentor or a coach that they can always talk to. Okay, so in this case, ChatGPT or any other AI tool that performs like ChatGPT can serve as this mentor or coach. Yes, they still need for you to have a human interface, okay? But to start with, you can actually use this, get some ideas from ChatGPT, which you can then use to discuss with this physical mentor that you have. So I would encourage you to use that. This is the feedback that I got, and I want to be better than this particular feedback. What else can I do? You will get some ideas, and then you can then take that information, validate it with your human mentor or coach, okay? And then that helps you to begin to improve your performance up to the standard that your line manager expects of you. So I will definitely encourage people to use that too. The tool is there, so why not use it?
And Nicolle, what are you seeing when you're working with different executives? Thank you so much, Emmanuel.
Well, and thank you, Emmanuel. I'm really enjoying listening to you as well. I would say with, what I see on the executive side is more of them trying to understand the technology quickly, right? They also, the ones that I work with, obviously, if not in the technical space, we're taken aback by this technology. They're expected to lead and talk to their employees about this technology and come up with new ideas and participate in all these things, but they don't have the context or the background for it. So a lot of it is trying to understand both how does it work, right, quickly, and get up to speed, understand some of the use cases in their industry and field, but also then understand what are the expectations around using it at work. And I think it really depends on the organization that you're in. So ChatGPT, anybody can use, and I loved Emmanuel's ways that you can do that and use feedback. But as far as executives, I think they're still trying to wrap their head around it. Now, there are products on the market that use AI, right, to evaluate, they use it to evaluate job seekers, and they use it to evaluate performance in the workplace. And, I think that technology it's still being developed, right? And so you want to look at it as with a curious but critical eye and say, okay, if I'm using this within my employees, how is it being used, right? Is it being used, is it accurate? One, because there are issues with accuracy. And then two, what is the impact on my workforce if we're using AI to evaluate employees? That's a bit different from using ChatGPT, but they are similar in the sense that they're using AI in the workplace, and the impact is different based on how you use AI. So that's a long answer to, they're still figuring it out, but that's okay, because even leadership, right, has to learn too. They have to keep the journey going with that self-directed learning, and especially around generative AI.
Yeah, I feel like it's not for the first time, but it's at least in my career, this is a first real shift with generative AI becoming a little bit more accessible, that you are seeing sort of the layers peeled back on, just because you're at the top of an organization doesn't mean you know everything. And I think the need for humility is building for all of us with this true, future of work, shifting of skills. We're really seeing what we don't know and have that conscious incompetence, like knowing that I know what something is, but I don't know how it works or what it is. And I know that I need to maybe find out or become good friends with the colleague who does
Absolutely.
know. Yeah, and so someone actually asked, I think we can transition just to make sure we have time, but we had a really good question in the Q&A, and if you have questions that you want to ask our speakers, please do put those in the Q&A so we can try and get to those now. But at this moment, this person says, I'm a little bit afraid of the effect of AI in the future. Lots of jobs are going to be taken by these tools. And how do you think we can cope with the effects of these tools in the near future? I don't know who would want to, Nicolle, do you want to start with that one? And do you have thoughts?
Sure. And I will say that that is real. I want to validate that. I think there's a tendency for people in technology, especially generative AI, and say, oh no, we're just going to make room for the things that you want to do, and we're going to get rid of the tedious work. That's not true. There are jobs that are being automated as we speak, and we see it in the news. This technology is going to have impacts seen and unforeseen. And one of the seen ones right now is the impact on, everything from content creators to even data scientists. Data scientists who've traditionally built these models that took months and months to build are now seeing them, you can run a model, anyone can run I say model, excuse me. I mean, the algorithms, the technology that powers these products. Now software engineers can run them off the shelf. They don't have to spend months building them. And so you see a lot of data scientists that are nervous about their job changing or going away. And so it's not just content, right? I think we're just starting to see the effects of that now. And I think one of the ways I think people should be worried, honestly, I think there is an element here where, that kind of fear should motivate you, right? And depending on where you're coming from and what your interest level is going to determine what you do with that. For some people, it might be, well, that's fine. I'm just going to dive in and learn as much as I can about the technology so I position myself for the future. That's what I've done, right? For the past, 6 months, I've been in a deep dive in this, and I luckily work in an organization that helps me do that. For others, it may be joining maybe a part of an organization to look at, okay, how do we evaluate the impact of these tools and make sure that people have resources if their jobs are being automated? That may be where your specialty is, and you should do that as well, right? So I think it's being honest about it, that we're still seeing that impact play out, and we're going to see a lot more in the months and years to come with this technology.
Thank you so much. I wonder if there's an analogy here, at least I feel it sometimes, of back when Microsoft Word was introduced and people are having to either transition from handwriting to typing to using a computer to using email, and imagining however many years ago that was, if like somebody was resistant to the idea of like, no, I just want to handwrite everything and I will mail you a letter or fax you. And I was like, maybe that's a little bit of where we are now, where people are, it's an unknown, it's new, it's different, and we are all going to have to jump on the train unless you send a fax machine to everybody, a proverbial fax machine to everyone so they can continue to communicate with you. Emmanuel, what do you think? Are you seeing similar things in your organization or in your experience? How afraid are you?
So in my organization, what we are trying to do is to deploy AI tools, especially in areas where we provide like a repetitive task or that deals with customer and people requests, okay? So say, for instance, if I take our HR software, okay, there are plans to integrate AI there to provide response to some certain knowledge-based questions that employees will be asking you from time to time. What does the policy say about this? So instead of calling someone to begin to explain to you what the policy says, you can actually type that question on the HR software and you get a response. So you begin to interact as if you are chatting with a real human being, but it's a system that is providing that answer. So that's an area where we're looking to incorporate. And then for customers also that have queries with regard to their relationship with us, the system is also able to begin to answer those queries and hand over to a human being when it doesn't have response for that particular question. So those are areas where we're looking at integrating AI in our work. And then aside from that, the other area we're also looking at integrating is using it to be able to do some repetitive work like reconciliation, comparing data and providing analysis. So those are some of the areas. So in terms of whether jobs will be taken away, the thing with technology is that when a new technology comes on stream, yes, some jobs will be eliminated. But as the system, that technology is eliminating jobs, it's also creating new ones. So the AI machine that we have today, somebody will have to program it, somebody will have to provide information that it will use. It cannot just on its own begin to generate the data that it will work with. So you need to feed that information, and then before the system begins to learn and then regenerate itself. So there will always be someone who will program the system. And so if you feel that what you're currently doing will be eliminated, then begin to develop yourself, because they said when you stop studying, you start dying. So you need to keep reading, keep learning, so that you become better than the machine, because till humans will continue to be better than the machine, because we invented it and we will have something new that we want to invent. So we want you to do something more. We keep tweaking and keep tweaking. So be that person that will tweak the system to do better things that you ordinarily will not be able to do. So that would be my take. So people should not be afraid that we're going to be working side by side with this technology. What our interest should be, how can I maximize this technology? How can I get this technology to do even greater things that I will not ordinarily be able to do within a shorter period of time? So if it takes me 1 week to get a task done, and this machine can give it to me within 30 minutes, why not? It means that my productivity level will become very, very high. Okay? I saw a question where someone was asking about students using it for their schoolwork and all that. So I think today it's possible for you to identify whether this work delivered by the student is original or not. If it was generated by the AI machine, say ChatGPT, ChatGPT will let you know that, yes, I actually did create this. So it's not the person's original work. So there are ways and means that we can begin to check whether the student is submitting an original work, or this is a copied work, or this is an assisted work, not done by themselves. So there are mechanisms that have been put in place to check for fraud and unethical practices that people might want to use the system to carry out. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you, Nicolle and Emmanuel. I mean, it's I think what we're seeing too is it's all of these tools, generative AI, it's really turning on its head education at large, and how we do assess, why we are assessing things the way we do. And I think, of course, that makes people uncomfortable when the norm and status quo is challenged. And I do appreciate Tunde, who asked this question about being afraid, and I love, Nicolle, that you're validating that fear and paying attention to what about the shifts and change makes you uncomfortable, and how are you being active in your pursuit of upskilling so that you can, I would say, maybe manage that discomfort. We are no longer in a professional, I think, or personal space where you can sit go to school and say, I'm done learning and I'm just going to sit in my career and ride it for the next 30 years. That doesn't exist anymore. And, you know, I think no matter what your field is, somebody said that they're an agricultural engineer, you know, the technologies that are constantly shifting, and how can you adapt and use it? And this is where I like, from that career development perspective, finding it sort of becomes you build your own rabbit hole. If you find one person who's an expert in your industry, in your space, and you follow them on LinkedIn or Twitter, over time, you're going to start to fill your own feed with other people who reflect those interests and ideas. What we have to be careful of course, is like creating our own echo chambers. And that's where you can now ask, like, who is challenging this perspective, either publicly or, you know, to ChatGPT. But I think we're increasingly, the advances in technology are actually pushing us to be more human, because we need to improve our ability to be critical thinkers. And like you said, Emmanuel, decide what is real and what isn't, and what is valid and what is not, and challenge our own perspectives rather than become sort of, again, like a proverbial sheep where we just accept information and don't question it. So we're having to strengthen those muscles more, which perhaps we're already weak, but hopefully we'll get stronger over time. So, you know, I'm trying to see here what other good questions we can ask. So we've answered this one about, you know, catching people, and there's a woman, I think it's Philippa Hardman, and I'll share her LinkedIn as well, who I've been learning a lot from, and she's been writing a lot about AI and education and how educators can adapt the way that they are assessing learners to, you know, what is cheating and how to avoid it. Or so I will include her website and in the follow-up. I've shared in the chat as well, you know, the link to ChatGPT, because that would be like when someone can start generative AI, getting involved with it, free to use. There's different ways you can log in. We'll include that as well in our follow-up, just so you have that. And so we have a question here about, let's see, prompt engineering, ChatGPT, explainable AI, and generative AI will be parts of humans' lifestyles. It is a hot debate in academics, media, and business. And what do you all see as the future of the human-machine relationship? It's a big question. Thank you, Ibrahim. Nicolle, Emmanuel, thoughts?
Yeah, I think I brushed a little bit about that earlier when I said we shouldn't be afraid to work with the machines because it's here to stay. So what do? We need to begin to learn how to use them. And it doesn't really take that much. So starting from the link that Jennifer had posted earlier, we can start from there. What is exactly this ChatGPT and how do you use it? And then begin to learn how to use prompts that will provide you the appropriate responses that you require. And even when you get answers from ChatGPT, you can also ask ChatGPT to refine those answers. So the answers that you get is as good as the prompts that you use, you know, that you feed into the system. And I've also talked about students using it, you know, even using it in your work to carry out research. So you need to, for data, you need to always double check to make sure that the references that you are getting are right. But sometimes you get wrong references from the system. And when you tell ChatGPT that references are wrong, the system will apologize as if you're talking to a real human being, you know, apologize for the error, and then also let you know that the system is continually learning daily to improve and get better. And so the system is as good as the information that we feed into it. So the more we feed information to the system is learning. So take, for example, when Nicolle talked about telling the system to assume a particular role, okay? So when you tell the system to assume a particular role and then provide information, the system begins to ask that particular role that you've asked them to assume. So basically, it's what we feed the system that how we feed and the information that we feed to the system will determine the kind of quality of results that we get out of the system. So over to you, Nicolle.
Yeah, I build on that and say, we're already using software, AI software, that AI runs in the backgrounds of our lives. It makes recommendations for what we see on social media, what media we consume, online, the media that we, if we're watching streaming services, what movies are shown to us and so on. So AI is already part of our lives. It's just most people, it wasn't so visible. And then you have something like generative AI, it becomes very visible. And also something like ChatGPT makes it now accessible. You can touch it, play with it, experiment with it. And we didn't have that before. And so it's really introduced people to artificial intelligence and the space. And I think, that was such a big question that was asked. So thanks for that question. And we're, at time, but I want to say AI is already part of our lives. Your job is to learn about it. How does it work? You don't need to know the code, but how does it work? What are the implications? I love getting people to think about the impact, because in this case, we need more people who are not technologists in this space, thinking about AI, talking about AI, and helping shape it. So that way it works for all of us and not just the people that are building it. So I'd say, like, just, with Emmanuel, it's here to stay. So learn about it and add your perspective to the discussion.
Thank you so much. We had so many great questions. We're at time, and I want to respect our speakers' time and everyone who's attending. As a high level, summary, I wanted to say, some of the things that I've taken away are the importance of being curious and asking good questions, whether that's to your tools that you're using or internally at your companies. Iterate, and that's what artificial intelligence is about. And also it's important that you are comfortable with that concept of, getting a result and seeing how you can improve upon it. And then letting your fear motivate you, paying attention to how different information makes you feel, what it brings up for you, and then seeing how you can turn that curiosity and or fear into motivation, and whether that's shifting in your career, upskilling, and so on. So my name is Jennifer Bangura with Nexford University. I'm our Director of Career Innovation, and I want to say a big thank you and a digital and physical round of applause to Nicolle Merrill and Emmanuel Michael for making the time to join us. Thank you to everyone here who has also joined live, and everyone else who's watching the recording. You all are amazing, and we really appreciate it. So have a great rest of your day. And thank you again, Nicolle and Emmanuel.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.